When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. Yep, let's get into it. The movie I'm referring to is George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead. This movie was released in 1978, and depending on who you believe online, it had a budget between 500,000 and 1.5 million, and it made 55 million upon release in 1978. And this movie was released unrated. When George Romero turned this into the MPAA, they threatened to give him an X. If you've seen the movie, you know why. It's very, very, very gory. One of the goriest movies of all time, along with George Romero's Day of the Dead. And George decided, I'm not going to give it a rating, I'm just going to go out unrated. And that's how they released the film. At first, George wanted to do a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. He got an idea for it. He took this movie was made, most of the movie, all the mall parts were made at the Monroeville Mall. And he took a tour of the mall. He knew the gentleman who was running the mall. And he gave him a tour of the mall. And the guy had to mention about how if there was something bad that happened to the country, you could live there. You could survive in the mall. There was like these hidden rooms in that. And that really gave George Romero the idea for Dawn of the Dead, what Dawn of the Dead became. The problem was George Romero couldn't get any financing for the film. Nobody wanted to give him money to make the movie. Enter Dario Argento, the director of movies like Deep Red, Suspiria, and other giallo films. He contacted George Romero and invited him to come to Rome to finish writing his script, which George did go to Rome, wrote the script, and Dario Argento helped George Romero secure financing to make his film. George came back to the States, started casting the film, and he hired David Emge to play Steven, or as he's nicknamed in the movie, Flyboy, because he flies the helicopter. Ken Foree, who is well known amongst genre fans. We love Ken Foree. He plays Peter, a SWAT team member. Scott Rillinger, I think I said his name right. Roger, he's one of the other SWAT team guy. And Galen Ross plays Francine. And David Emke flies a helicopter for this news station. That's where the movie starts. And his girlfriend, Galen Ross, is an executive at this TV station. And there's a conversation going on in the background, and there's all this chaos going on in this newsroom. And this one doctor and this one news anchor are kind of bickering back and forth, and the doctor's trying to give advice about even if a family member dies, no matter how much you love them, when they reanimate, remember, they're not your loved one anymore, and you must shoot them in the head or destroy the brain. It's the only way to stop these things. And the newscasters kind of calling out. They go back and forth a lot. They're arguing a lot. It's a really intense scene. And Steven comes down and talks to Francine about, be ready once we're off the air. We're getting out of here. And she's like, what are you talking about? And one guy says to her, well, don't worry. The federal government's taking over. Our job here is done. Our responsibility is over. And then we're introduced to Peter and Roger, and they're about to do a raid on an apartment building because they're trying to get people out of this apartment building, but they're held up in there. So the SWAT team goes in, and this is where we start seeing some of the horrors of what's happened since Night of the Living Dead. The infection of the zombie outbreak has gotten bigger. The scope of this movie is way bigger than Night of the Living Dead. This is definitely a more epic zombie film than Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead basically took place in one location, the farmhouse, as we all know. This movie is more wide open. I mean, obviously, Romero didn't have a huge budget, but it's definitely the bigger movie than Night of the Living Dead. And in this building, they run into zombies and the horrors that are going on. And the people that live in the building are putting their relatives that turn into zombies in this cage in the basement. And Peter and Roger end up going down there and shooting a lot of these zombies in the head and disposing of them. And after it's all over, this raid, Roger tells Peter of his plan. They're getting out of there. He's leaving in a helicopter with Steven and his girlfriend, and he invites Peter to tag along with them. They're going to try to get out there and find somewhere to hold up. And Peter agrees to go. So they go and meet with Steven and Francine, and they get in a helicopter and they take off. And there's a really cool scene at a little small airport, which was filmed right outside of Monroeville. And we have some zombie action there. 2 little kids and another guy who gets his head chopped off with the propeller blades on the helicopter, which is a really cool scene. Oh, by the way, Tom Savini did the special effects in this film. And The gore gags are spectacular. Now, the zombie looks themselves are not that elaborate in this film. Day of the Dead, in my mind, is Tom Savini's masterpiece. Tom Savini's a master of special effects, no doubt. Day of the Dead for his zombie movies was definitely the pinnacle and still some of the best zombie makers I've ever seen. Even Tom Savini admits the makeup he used in this film to depict the zombies, he regrets in some ways. It doesn't look that great on film. They just come off as like bluish gray. But the gore gags are spectacular, so nothing to take away from Tom Savini. He does a great job. And the reason he did this movie, Tom Savini was supposed to do the effects for Night of the Living Dead. But before they started shooting, Tom Savini got drafted and went to Vietnam, so he never got to be involved with that film. This was, George Romero obviously contacted Tom Savini right away when he knew he was making Dawn of the Dead, and Tom Savini came in to do the effects. And as we know, he worked with Romero a lot. He did Creepshow, Day of the Dead, Two Evil Eyes, Monkey Shines, and so on and so forth. And they're friends. They both lived in Pittsburgh at the time. George Romero unfortunately has passed away, but Tom Savini still lives in Pittsburgh and has a makeup effects school there still to this day. And anyway, after the airport scene, they get back on the helicopter and they're flying, and they're going over the countryside, and they see all these National Guard types, and they say rednecks going around cleaning up any zombies they can find. And even Steven makes the comment, those rednecks must be loving this. And they show these rednecks drinking beer, carrying their shotguns, killing zombies. And they happen to fly over this mall, and there's nobody there. They see some zombies in the parking lot, but there's just nobody there. So they decide to land and check it out. And after scouting out, they realize this is a good place to fortify and hang out for a while till all this blows over. So they take the steps to seal up the mall. They kill off all the zombies, get rid of the bodies. And they decide to live there for a while. And I know it's been said in Romero, there's a great documentary on the 3 DVD set. Or actually, I think it was more than 3 DVD. I have the set. The Anchor Bay released back in the 2000s. There's a nice long documentary on it. You can see it on YouTube. If you just you search for Dawn of the Dead documentaries, it pops up. You can watch it for free on YouTube. That Romero had the undertones about his thoughts on consumerism, because there's even a part in the movie where they even say why did the zombies come here, and Steven says this is a place they remember, something that was important in our lives. And it kind of is like us, a look at us about the way we look at how much stuff we buy, how much stuff we own. Consumerism as a whole, it kind of takes a look at that. But it doesn't knock you over the head with it, but it's definitely there, and it's obvious during the film. Anyway, once they have the mall to themselves, you can see them declining into boredom, kind of. Because they don't come in contact with anybody else, it's just the 4 of them. But they have pretty much everything they need. There's food there, there's a gun store in there, so they have plenty of guns and ammo. They've blocked off all the exits so the zombies can't get in. But one day, Peter and Roger go outside, and Roger gets bitten by a zombie. And you can see his health slowly decaying. And eventually, Peter has to kill Roger. Shoots him in the head. And then now we're down to only 3 people. And then one night, this biker gang, who's been basically pillaging towns for supplies, they've pretty much been living on the road since this stuff started. And Tom Savini actually plays one of the bikers, which is cool. They raid the mall. And Peter and Steven have to defend the mall. And with them taking down the barricades, the zombies get in. And all the bikers get wiped out. And Steven gets bitten. He actually gets eaten. He's in the elevator, and about 10 zombies come in and take bites out of him. And he turns into a zombie. And now Peter and Francine have to leave. And Francine, thank goodness, had gotten flying lessons on the helicopter from Steven. And Peter decides he doesn't want to leave. And then at the last second, he changed his mind. And him and Francine get in the helicopter and fly away. And that's the end of Dawn of the Dead. This movie is... Day of the Dead is... I love Dawn of the Dead. Don't get me wrong. I love all 3 of George Romero's original trilogy of his Dead movies. I love Dawn of the Dead. My favorite still is Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead isn't considered George Romero's best zombie film, but I think that film has a lot to say and is really well done. It's dark as hell and bleak. This movie's more fun, almost like a comic book kind of movie, almost kind of thing. This movie's definitely more fun out of the 3. Day of the Dead is very, very dark, but this film is really well done. It's a George Romero movie. He's a master at these things. Like I said, again, we could thank we wouldn't have things like The Walking Dead or all these zombie things around if it wasn't for George A. Romero. He's the man who started all this, and he knocks it out of the park. The acting's Ken Foray is really good. All the actors do what they can. I got to be honest, the acting is probably one area where it's held back just a little bit. The acting's not the best, but it gets the job done. Nothing to take away from the actors. It gets the job done. I would give Dawn of the Dead, and if you don't like a lot of gore, I mean, they rip out guts in this film. They rip limbs off the zombies. It's very, very gory, especially at the end of the movie. I mean, there's some gore at the beginning, a lot of gore. But when the mall gets sieged by the motorcycle gang, I mean, there's people getting intestines ripped out, arms ripped off, throats ripped out, bitten out. It's very graphic, and Tom Savini goes crazy with the gore effects, and it looks great and disgusting, and it's awesome. I would give Dawn of the Dead a 9.25 out of 10. This is a definite classic. I love this film. If you've never seen it, I know a lot of people have seen the remake with Zack Snyder, written by James Gunn. And I like the remake, I really do, but it does not beat the original movie. Check out the original Dawn of the Dead. I know it's hard to find right now on Blu-ray. I heard a company just announced they're going to come out with a special edition of this on Blu-ray. I know the DVDs that are around, that are floating around eBay and are going for a high price, but it might be streaming somewhere. I don't know. But definitely check it out if you get a chance. Yes, 9.25 out of 10 for me for Dawn of the Dead. George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, 1978. It's a great movie, and it's kind of fun to go back and watch these films, given what's going on. But yeah, that's it for me for Dawn of the Dead. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to my channel. I'd appreciate that as well. And you all take care of yourself and stay safe, and I'll be back soon with another review. Thanks.